Thank you, Chris. Did Jesus really exist? This is the question I want to ask on this the Reign of Christ Sunday. And I'm going to be talking about faith and science and proof and confession. And there are two rabbit holes I don't want to get lost into this morning. The first is the danger that befall many of the making the case for Christ types who seek to use a kind of pseudoscientific inquiry to prove universal religious claims like those made by the Apostle Paul in that beautiful reading from Colossians. Often these folks are well-intentioned biblical literalists who use science and history and reason in an attempt to prove faith, and in the process end up doing a disservice both to faith and science. So rabbit hole number one is when we conflate faith and science and make science strictly subservient to the claims of faith. The danger here is that we lose such things as fact, history, and objectivity. Everything becomes subjective. We can label things as fake news or fake science, not because we have facts to back up our claims, but because belief and opinion trumps everything. So that's rabbit hole number one. Help me not get lost there this morning. Here's rabbit hole number two. It's best summed up by the Richard Dawkins School of Atheism that asserts that all religion is nothing more than fantasy and mythology, a dangerous fiction that radicalizes its adherents. In this line of thinking, religion is nothing more than mere belief, made-up stories that reinforce bias or consolidate power. Of course, that ignores our historical roots, the real earthly context of our scriptures, and the real earthly context of our faith. It's that second danger that I want to address this morning by talking about the Jesus of history. Too often, I have heard from our confirmands and even our members the suspicion that Richard Dawkins is right, that it's all just made up, this faith of ours, with no real rootage in fact, history, or reality. So, let's face the question squarely this Reign of Christ Sunday. Did Jesus of Nazareth, who was called Christ, exist as a real human being? Certainly the Bible tells us so, and we underestimate the historical value of the New Testament in particular at our own peril. But clearly the Gospels engage in exaggeration, contain contradictions, engage in universal faith claims that transcend historical categories. So let's play fair. Let's set aside our scriptures for a moment as proof for Jesus' real human existence. That would leave us with two other sources: classical, that is the Greco-Roman world, or Jewish authorities. And that leads us to the first note in your bulletin this morning, an extended quote from the Roman historian Tacitus. Open up your bulletins and let's have a look. It's listed right under the title of my meditation. Tacitus was perhaps the best of the Roman historians, and in his last major work, written around 116 to 117 AD, he deals with the burning of the part of Rome where the Emperor Nero wanted to carry out a building project. Nero shifted the blame for this fire to a widely despised new religious sect. Tacitus shared Nero's hatred of Christians, and the words he wrote in this and in all about Christianity were not kind, as it says in note number 1 in your bulletin. Neither human effort, nor the emperor's generosity, nor the placating of the gods ended the scandalous belief the fire had been ordered by Nero. Therefore, to put down the rumor, Nero substituted as culprits and punished in the most unusual way these Christians. The founder of this name, Christ, had been executed in the reign of Tiberius by the procurator Pontius Pilate. Suppressed for a time, the deadly superstition erupted again, not only in Judea, the origin of this evil, but also in the city where all things horrible and shameful from everywhere come together and become popular. This statement made by Tacitus, certainly no apologist for Christianity, corroborates the New Testament on certain details about Jesus, that he was referred to as the Christ or Messiah, that this Christ was associated with the beginning of a movement of Christians whose name originated from his. 3, that he was executed by the Roman governor of Judea. And 4, that the time of his death was during Pontius Pilate's governorship during the reign of the Emperor Tiberius. The other strong direct evidence that speaks about Jesus as a real person comes from Josephus, a Jewish priest who grew up as an aristocrat in first century Palestine, ended up living in Rome. Josephus had a unique position as a Jew who was secure in Roman imperial patronage and whose writings sought to present Judaism as a religion to be admired for its moral and philosophical depth. So, in the midst of his description of the absence of a Roman governor between Festus's death and Governor Albanus's arrival in 62 A.D., Josephus mentions the execution of James, the leader of the Christian church in Jerusalem. This is from note 2 in your bulletin. Take a look at it. Being therefore this kind of person, Ananus, thinking that he had a favorable opportunity because Festus had died and Albinus was still on his way, called a meeting of judges and brought into it the brother of Jesus, who is called Messiah, James by name, and some others. He made the accusation that they had transgressed the law, and he handed them over to be stoned. This, too, corroborates the existence of Jesus, his being referred to as Messiah or Christ, and in this case, of his family relationship to James, the head of the Jerusalem Christian church. Like with Tacitus, these recorded accounts come from one who has no love of Christianity. In fact, he has reason to discount the fledgling faith. Later in Josephus's Jewish antiquities, he will have a more extended description of Jesus as 1, a wise man who 2, did surprising deeds, and 3, taught the people, and 4, won over many Jews and many Greeks, and 5, was condemned to death by Pilate, but 6, those who came to love him did not give up their affection for him, and 7, the tribe of Christians, so called after him, have still to this day not died out. There, of course, are many secondary Christian sources, beginning with the Gospels and the epistles, that contain many of the same testimonies to the real existence of Jesus, to his teaching and acts of wonder, to the love he evoked, the name of Christ by which he was called, the death by crucifixion he suffered upon Pilate's orders, and the persistence of the movement that was established in his name. It's also true that there is no ancient person, Jew, Roman, or Greek, who ever seriously argued that Jesus did not exist. There certainly were many writings, particularly among the rabbis of the first 2 centuries, that argued that Jesus' birth was illegitimate, that he performed miracles by evil magic, that he encouraged apostasy, and was justly executed for his sins. But none of them denied his existence. So, there you have it. An unequivocal yes. Jesus did indeed exist, was teacher and wonder worker, proclaimed Christ by those who loved him, and was crucified at the hands of the powerful. Our Christian faith is faith, not fantasy. We are rooted in fact, not fiction. We claim a history, not a mythology. We are about to enter the season of the Incarnation, the holy mystery we'll be exploring through Advent. God came to earth to live among us, to enter and shape our history and our everyday lives. Therefore, our faith is not a series of abstract principles, but a lived commitment, transforming lives and giving these lives over to the task of transforming the world. Jesus was real, flesh and blood, a human being with life and breath, blessings and limitations, just like you and me. The teachings of Jesus, which we hold so close to our hearts, yearn not just for intellectual understanding, but for new life, a response of new, earthly, and tangible commitment from our very tangible Christ. This is one of the reasons why I try not to get all bah humbug about all the tangible ways that we observe this holiday, the tree lights and yard ornaments, the ironic sweaters and earnest greeting cards, the countdown to Christmas measured in Sundays in Advent or shopping days until Xmas. Maybe those can be tangible reminders of our very tangible Savior and his very tangible presence among very tangible you and me. The taste of turkey reminding us to feed the hungry, the giving of gifts as a sign of blessings passed on to the poor, illuminating our trees as lighting the light of love to shine in those around us, and not just family and friends, but neighbors and strangers, each of us beloved in the eyes of God. Jesus was real. As his followers, we should get real too. Amen.